Alright, what we're doing today, folks, is we're going to learn how to frame a wall. Framing a wall is not hard, but if you get off on your measurements, it's a pain. So it's important to take your time ahead of time. If you look over here, we kind of started to get set up a little bit. Normally we're going to be putting up 8-foot walls, but because this distance is about 10'4", 10'6", it's 124 inches. It didn't make any sense to build an 8-foot wall. So what we're going to do is build a 10-foot wall, and then we're going to set it in place. You notice these two 2x4s sitting here on the edge. Those are called cleats. We put those cleats in place so when we go to set the wall in place, we have something to push against. We don't have to worry about it running off the side, and we know for a fact that the edge of our 2x4s is going to line up with the base plate here on the foundation. So next thing we're going to do is start laying stuff out. I'm going to lay it out first, then I'm going to come back and explain to you what I did. Alright, if you look over here, we've drawn lines, and there's X's indicating on which side the board's going to go. Come in a little closer. The X's indicate on which side the board is going to go. We want to be on a center. That's why we came back in about 3/4 of an inch. Because if you look at dimensional lumber, right in the center, dimensional lumber is 1.5 inches. 2 by anything is going to be 1.5 inches in thickness. So we're going to be at 3/4 of an inch. So when we were laying this out, we came down to 3/4 of an inch. And if you notice, we're lined up on these red numbers that we talked about in a previous video, and that lets us lay out our line. We went down, used a square, and laid it out. Something you can do, it doesn't cost you much money, it's going to make your life easier in the long run, is invest in a bigger speed square. This is a 9-inch instead of a 6-inch, or it might even be a 12-inch. Yeah, it's 12-inch. But you can mark more than one piece of wood at a time. Our goal was to make 2 plates that are identical, because this will be the bottom plate, this one will be sitting on top, it'll be the top plate, and that way everything lines up. So now we're going to start setting studs in place. And now, there's a couple things. One, you'll notice these studs are bright pink. What I was told about bright pink studs at one time was they are specially treated to be fireproof. I don't know if that's true or not. Something else I was told, that they're bright pink because people decided that that was the color they wanted from a factory or sawmill where they were cut, so they stained them bright pink so they could tell it was theirs. One thing I do know is most of the time now, bright pink has become an industry standard for what's called a cut stud. What that means is these pink studs are not 8 feet long. A 2x4x8 is 2 feet or 2 inches by 4 inches by 8 inches, and then it's cut down. It's planed down, but when they rough cut it, it's actually 2 inches by 4 inches by 8 feet long. These are 92.5 inches. These are 3 inches shorter. And what that does is that takes into account the thickness of this base plate and the thickness of the top plate, so that your wall is actually 8 feet tall. So that's one of the reasons that they're pink. We've kind of roughly laid out what we got here. Notice we left a big hollow spot in the center. There's a reason for that, because we're going to be framing for a window on this wall. So we're going to tack some of this stuff together, and we'll be back with you in a little bit. You can do it, one, you can use pieces as a spacer here. You can use 3 full studs. I had a stud with a crappy end, so I'm kind of making a hybrid. I'm doing both. All this is doing is acting as a spacer, so when we stand this wall up and put another 2x4 back against it, like this, I've got something to nail to. And that's really what we're doing right now. So we're going to tack this together and put this corner in. We have our wall studs tacked into place. What we have here is a corner. There's a corner over there as well. These are going to give us a lot of strength in the corners of the structure. They also give us something to nail to. If you look here in the center, not all our studs are 92.5 inches. We're going to put a window in here. So we framed the bottom sill of the window. Then we're going to put a header in, which is made out of 2x6s. That's to help bear some of that weight, because we're going to be cutting a big center section out of this joist, or out of this stud. So once we get all that in, it'll be framed for the window, and then we can put the window in place. All right, now what we're going to do is put in the header. The header is made out of 2x6s when you're using 2x4 construction. And we got one 2x6 that sits here. Then we have another one that sits here. But if you notice, there's a gap. So we use 1/2 inch plywood as a spacer so that we can line this thing all up and nail it all together. See how much better fit you get? So now we're going to tack that together. We're going to tack that together. Then we're going to put in one more filler stud there. And we got to put in some other studs, and I'll show those to you in a second. Alright, so we got the header in, which is here. You notice there's a little piece of plywood there, which gave us a spacer. On top, to make sure that this plate was carrying the weight down, we had to put in this little scab stud. Then on either side, to transfer the weight across the header down to the ground, we put in these jack studs on either side. This is going to be the bottom sill of our window, and then we have 2 more jack studs that we have to put in. It's going to transfer the weight to the floor. That's pretty much a completely framed wall. Then the next step is going to be make sure it's square, brace it, and then set it up in place and tack it down. So we've got the wall set up into place. A couple things I want to point out to you. I wish I could have been videoing, but it took all 3 of us. These are corner braces. Once we got the thing in square, we measured the diagonals. They were good. We put them on to make sure it stayed square. We can take them off before we start putting on sheeting. Over here, we've got side braces. So we've got those to help hold the wall up. You can see down here, we've got these braces to make sure the wall lined up with the edge of the foundation. Then we came back and tacked everything in place. The whole wall's tacked, a bunch of tacks. It ain't going anywhere. If you look at it, it's pretty dang solid. I can't wiggle it. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. To put it up, it took 2 people up on top raising it and then 1 person bracing it. But it's up now. Now we can continue on and work on other pieces of wall. Thank you.